Hey everyone, welcome to the Questioning Behaviour podcast. As always, we're here with me, Merle, who else? And of course with my much better half, Sarah Bowen.
You're the dummy that don't believe in science. All your projects always be denying. You're the dummy that don't believe.
Sarah, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks.
How are you this lovely morning?
Oh, yes, not doing too badly. Everything's okay in the grand scheme of things. How are you?
Same, everything is okay in the grand scheme of things, despite it being morning. Of course, as always, we are recording these intros slightly differently from how we are recording the main interview, breaking the fourth wall and everything. So we've technically speaking already talked to Josh, and then the topic of today, as people probably got from the title, is breaking the bank. So Sarah, what does that mean to you, breaking the bank?
I mean, my brain first goes to some sort of criminal behaviour, like physically breaking the bank, or just, criminal behavior in your own personal finance sort of life of spending more than what's coming in in a big grandiose way. That's what I'm getting. What about you? Am I far off?
Yes, you're quite far off. So your options are overconsumption with disregard for your own financial well-being, or like going V is for Vendetta style on a bank.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
There's no in between.
Clearly not. No, breaking the bank. Although I think it's actually an English saying where I think your latter definition is correct for the saying.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're not too far off. But no, today's episode we're going to talk to Josh DeTar. I've been on an episode for his podcast. Where we talked about my expertise, I suppose, which is behavioral science meets personal finance. Josh works for Typhone, and they are helping community-oriented banks with their technology so that they can compete with what we would call traditional banks, for-profit banks, and banks in which the consumer is more the product than they are the person being looked after, like the actual stakeholder. So that is going to be the focus of our topic today. And I think Josh can explain this much, much better than we can. So let's dive into it. Okay, guys, so as I said before, we're talking to someone who isn't technically speaking a behavioral scientist. So, Josh, please introduce yourself to the crowd. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you get there?
Hey, yeah. So my name's Josh DeTar, and I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing for a software company in the United States. We provide SaaS digital banking solutions to community-minded financial institutions. So we provide the software that allows end users and consumers of community banks and credit unions to be able to access their relationship with their FI, their money, and their accounts through digital means. I've been here at the company for a little over 4 years, and it's one of those kind of stumbled into roles, but turned into be the best stumble I've ever made.
Good for you.
I've been somebody who's been really personally passionate about the credit union space in specific for a very long time. When I was in my late teenage years, we'll say, I wasn't exactly the smartest with my money. So I didn't really comprehend that whole concept behind when you swiped your debit card at the point of sale, there was supposed to be money on the other side of that thing.
That would be nice.
And so, yeah. So some of the major banking institutions maybe less than politely asked me to take my business elsewhere. And I happen to be fortunate enough to be working for a company that was the SEG of a small credit union. And literally one of the guys I worked with told me I was an idiot with my money and I needed help. And I should go talk to our credit union. And it worked. Yeah. I kind of got the message.
So for a European perspective, or someone who might not be a native English speaking, so credit union is something which sounds very, very American. So what exactly is a credit union, and what does a credit union do? Because, I mean, I'll be the person in the room to just raise my hand and be like, that's an American thing. I need more info.
So you want to know what's funny is it's actually not.
Ooh.
So the first credit union was actually, I'm going to get really upset at myself that I didn't Google this one before. I'm pretty sure it started in Germany.
Or at least it wasn't in the Netherlands, so I'm off the
hook. But yeah, it actually originated outside of the United States. But essentially what it is it's a co-op financial institution. Okay. So as opposed to having, a for-profit business that is owned by shareholders, it is a nonprofit that is owned by the members of that institution. So if you become a member of a credit union, and this is actually a little known fact by even Americans who do their banking at credit unions, you actually own the credit union. So when you initially sign up, you become a partial owner of the credit union as a member. What that does is it fundamentally changes the way that they view their consumers, right? Mm-hmm. When you're not for profit, it changes things.
So what changes?
So what changes is the focus on delivering ROI is not to shareholders, but to the actual members of that institution. So at a bank, the shareholders are the people trying to make money off of the bank, right?
Meaning of the customer, of the consumer.
Off of the consumer.
Yeah.
Whereas in a credit union or in that co-op model, right, you're trying to make money for the people that are your customers. So the focus becomes a lot more on providing value and experience for the members than simply creating a high rate of return for investors.
Okay. So is there a type of person that tends to use a credit union over a commercial bank? Like, do you see, I mean, from your story, is it people that, they can't, the commercial banks have said, no, we don't want you. So there's no other option. Or is there a lot of opt-in?
I'm just a dummy anomaly for being told I probably shouldn't take my business to them. No, it's interesting. So there was actually a recent study done here in the United States, and about 60% of U.S. consumers actually want to do their banking with a community-minded financial institution. Okay. They don't necessarily delineate between a credit union and a community bank. Because both of those institutions, while one is for-profit and one is not for-profit, both of those institutions still do demonstrate that they care about the communities that they are a part of. Okay. Right. And they want to deliver value back to those communities. So they want to help the actual, people that live there. They want to help the small businesses that are trying to run in that area. So people want to do business there. But what's interesting is that a lot of people don't know that they, one, have the ability to do business there, or two, that those places actually offer all of the things that they're looking for. And so this is one of the things, going back to your initial question of, why did I get into this and what I do now? This is one of the things that that I get really passionate about, is because a lot of people want to do their business there. A lot of people don't think that particularly community-minded financial institutions have the technology that they're looking for. And so we really aim to change that and help support those community FIs by giving them great technology. So you've got this kind of desire to do business with someone that you get the warm and fuzzies from, right? Mm-hmm. But they don't feel like they can get all the things they need. So a lot of times they go more towards the big banks.
Okay. Yeah. So rather than it be a compromise of, I want to, this is what I would like to do, but then I feel like I would have to compromise the, ease of access and the convenience, like eliminate that compromise and bring everyone over into community-minded institutions. I mean, that sounds great. How's it going?
Yeah, it is good. I think that there's a balance that is somewhat necessary, right? Because especially here in the United States, a lot of times capitalism drives innovation, right? So there is an important place for the big banks. It's a lot of what, the credit unions and the community-minded banks, especially from a technology perspective, they look up to the big banks. Why? I mean, Bank of America, I think last time I looked, has something like 6,000 software developers on staff, right?
Sure.
So they have the ability to really innovate in the digital experience space because they have the funds and the resources. And that's because of capitalism, to be honest, right? Yeah. But there's also a really important place for credit unions to provide really personalized services that actually care about the financial well-beings of their communities as well. So there's a little bit of a balance. We're just kind of big fans of, swinging that technology pendulum back over to the community FIs and giving them an ability to compete a little bit more on the technology side, so that when you do have those people that are looking at, where do I do my banking? They don't feel like, well, I want to do business here, but I just don't think that they can actually service me, so I'll go over here. They actually kind of get the choice.
Good. I mean, I think this is very commendable. I would like to think of this as the future. Now, we keep saying that, that smaller banks or, community-minded banks, they might not have the technology. Now, you've already mentioned that, a big bank, a standard bank, has a lot of software developers, but can we define a bit more what type of technology that obviously a big bank would have and has the competitive advantage on as compared to a smaller bank or a community-minded bank? Because what tech am I supposed to think of here?
I mean, I think the biggest one that's going to have really easily kind of identifiable direct impact to a consumer is going to be that software that we provide, that digital banking experience. So if you want to check how much money you have in your account and you want to do it from your computer or your phone or your smartwatch, or by asking your Amazon lady, I won't say her name because she'll pipe up in the kitchen, but being able to leverage that technology. And then look, at the end of the day, all of these institutions, they all offer at the bare minimum, some way to access it. But it's once you access it through your phone, how many features do you actually have access to, and what types of things can you do? So can you do a person-to-person payment transfer through it? Can you pay a bill? Can, you see an investment account in there? How many things can you do in there?
Right.
Yep, that makes sense.
Interesting. And I mean, I guess I'm not sure whether you'd know the answer to this, but I mean, we've already sort of talked about, or we've just sort of used the term financial well-being in passing. But I wonder, from your perspective, how important is the role of technology, or in other words, what features should mobile banking have in order to help people maximize their financial well-being? What's important from that regard, do you think?
That's a great question. And that was one of the reasons why I was really excited actually to have Merle on our podcast, was to talk about, how does the behavioral element of how people do things or think about things play into how do they manage their money, and how does technology either fit into that or not. Yeah. And we were talking about just, it's interesting to see that's a space that it looks like, fintech and big tech really wants to play in, is this personal financial management or PFM type software. So you get the Mints or the Intuits, and then you get some of the, smaller players or the folks that integrate into digital banking, like what we do. And what's really interesting is in that space, it sounds like a great idea, right? Like, Sarah, we really want to help you understand your budget better and understand your spending better and help you make better decisions. Nobody uses it. I mean,
and even if they do,
crazy low.
It backfires. I remember being on the podcast with Josh, which, by the way, was very, very great. And also, Josh is much more professional than we are. So we'll make sure to link everything below. You have to check it out because it's really, really good. I'm not saying that because I was on it. I'm saying it because other really cool people were on it. But we were discussing, like these budgeting plans and all these PFM tools, and that I think just before we had this chat, actually research had come out from the Think Forward initiative, which proved that most of these apps, they don't work. And that if you budget a certain way, it actually backfires and you spend more. And that the best way to make sure that you spend less is to not have really accurate information of what's going on in your accounts, and not have like 600 different mental or actual accounts, but to have like, the spending that you need to do, like all your bills versus all the other shite. That is as much as you seem to need. And then the balances on these accounts should not be represented to you accurately, as in like, oh, I have £300 and 54 pence left. It should be more like, oh yeah, you've got between 280 and 320 pounds left. That seems to work much better. according to behavioral science. So now that you know that, do any of the budgeting apps still make sense?
That's a great. So I'm curious. So from your two perspective, right? Do you think that would actually help by giving people a sense of maybe quote unquote mystery, or I don't know, would the behavior be fear?
I love
how much
mystery.
do you really have? Is this check going to bounce? Yes or no?
How risk-taking am I? How risk-taking am I assuming 280, or am I, no, the other way around? Am I assuming I've got 320 left, or am I more likely to have 280 left?
Yeah.
I don't know whether that would work for me. I think I would be more annoyed. If I'm going into my app and I want to find information, I know what I want to find when I go into the app normally. Like I want to see how much money I have in my bank account. Is there anything coming out in the next couple of days? Do I have to move some money around? I'm going into the app with an intention. So if it was like, "Ooh, you have some amount of money between this and this," I'd be like, "What?" It would feel a bit deceptive, I think. And then I think trust as well is huge in your financial institution. So I wouldn't want to erode any of that.
Well, you make a good point, Sarah. And I think, I think you two would actually love talking to Ulas, who's our VP of product management. So he is the one, really the brains behind designing our user experience.
Excellent. He can come on as well.
The guy just eats, sleeps, and breathes trying to understand how people want to use technology, right? And, he looks at everything from, where are the places that you spend the most time in technology and what types of, user learned behavior comes out of that to, how does the animal kingdom approach efficiency, and from a really raw state, how does that, correlate to how we humans want to do things? It's just fascinating. But, the comment that you made that got me thinking about that was, we make this statement a lot that, our digital banking solution, when we're pitching it to a credit union or a community bank, and we're saying, our user experience is amazing, sometimes we have to take our ego out of it because, we think that our software is amazing and that people are going to want to use it. But let's be honest, if you're sitting there at a bus stop waiting for a bus to work and you pull out your phone because you got 10 minutes to kill, you are not going to go hang out in your banking app because it's so cool. Right? Like you're going to go cruise Instagram to see what your friends are up to, or you're going to go do some shopping on Amazon for some packages that'll be home when you get there. Like that's the world we live in. Right. Sure. So to your point, Sarah, like when you're logging into digital banking, it's because I want to see something, I want to learn something, or I want to accomplish something. Like that's it. And so I think that one of the problems with, the behavior around wanting to do budgeting and, looking at your spend is it takes time. It takes energy. Yeah. Like I have to put effort into this. I have to go categorize where I spent that money. And okay, so I spent $200 at Amazon. Like, well, some of that was for clothing. Some of that was for, work. Some of that was for this. So what category does that fall? I don't care. Screw it. I spent $200. It is what it is.
Yeah. Josh, you should support better businesses than Amazon. Amazon doesn't need your money. It doesn't need your money. Bezos is rich already.
Hey, he needs that what? Like $200 billionth or whatever he's at now.
No, but I think there's an interesting point I think here about, when designing these tools to help people manage their money, I think a lot of them start with such good intentions of like, how do we make this attractive? How do we make this easy? We can automate it, but actually using it is another thing. If it takes any amount of time or effort to, recategorize things or to set a new budget every month. Yeah, I think if you don't have the motivation behind the actual want to change the way you budget or the want to use the app in this way to budget, maybe we're not seeing that translated. But yeah, I think more research always needs to be done on this, but it's just continuing.
I'm curious, from your perspective, is it, I'm just going to call it out, like, we Americans are lazy. Right?
We did not say this. We did not say this. I would like to emphasize.
I'm like, wait, I have to put effort into figuring out what I spent? Nah. So is that something that you guys see as a trend over there as well? Or is that just a behavioral shift for how we want to interact with our money versus other countries?
I think it's a barrier. Any sort of effort you have to put in, I mean, they always say the sort of behaviorally, if you take the behavioral approach, if you want someone to do something, you've got to make it as easy as possible. You gotta take out that component of, oh yeah, I need to remember to log this, every time. So I think you could think of it as a barrier. You can also think about actually sometimes having to exert effort can be quite good because it makes people think a bit more intentionally about what they're doing rather than just letting it
much more salient.
You can have the opposite argument where you can make it too easy to spend money, like with credit cards, and you stop even thinking. It doesn't feel as like, the pain of paying always finds its way back into our episodes. Merle loves it, but it doesn't even feel like money. You're not even thinking about it as if, oh no, I just spent 40 pounds, especially for like tiny little transactions on all day. So I think you can think of it, effort as a real barrier, and attention, of course. And I don't think it's just Americans. I think it's just humans.
No, I don't think 100%. It's Americans
it's just
either.
Humans.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to say that either. So what I've noticed, so I think the more technologically advanced the generations become, and then of course there are some outshoots in every generation where I'm sure there's like an 80-year-old who's just really cracking on with crypto. I don't know, maybe, we don't know. But like, I feel like the more technologically advanced you become and the more you get into fintech, the more that you get used to the fact that an app can track this for you and an app can do that for you and a system can do this for you. And as a result, you do become lazy. But I don't think it's an American thing. I think it has to do with technological advancement and how adjusted you are to that. So I think, as we get younger and younger people who grow up, with their iPhone being their sixth limb, or the fifth limb. I don't actually know how many limbs we have.
Yeah, wait a second.
I was going to say, what fifth limb are you rocking? Like,
so if it's essentially attached like a fifth limb, this is the difference. And I mean, I can go on an entire tangent like this, but if you grow up with, online banking, and if you grow up not with physical money, but seeing numbers on the screen, it is near impossible. Like, you can't develop the same relationship with money than someone could 50 years ago, where cash was the only way to properly pay. That is just not possible. So, and this is also the issue I have with PFM tools, where they're like, let's just track everything. I'm like, no, because to track everything is to do everything through cards and really easy payment methods. And we're getting further and further away from the ideal that you put effort into knowing where the fuck your money is going. Because the easier it gets, the less you care. And it's gotten very, very, very easy. I will put away my soapbox.
No, I'm with you. I will say that is one of the biggest takeaways that I had from having you on as a guest in our podcast.
Oh, great.
Was, I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how many people I've had that conversation with after that. Oh, great. There's actually a problem with removing all barriers, right? And it is so true. I mean, I think about it even in my own personal life, right? If all I have to do is tap my watch at the point of sale, I am so far disassociated from I had to put in work and effort and my time and sacrifices to earn that money to then use it to purchase that good. Where I'm at the checkout, I'm like, oh, I want that. That's only a couple of bucks. Sure, watch, bam, done, out the door, right? And so introducing friction in the right way is actually a way to change behavior for the better.
Yes.
So, but the question then becomes, right, is who's driving what behavior we want people to take? And this goes back to my original soapbox of why community-minded financial institutions are important, right? Because if their focus is on providing actual value and benefit for their consumers and their communities, then they're not all about profit. So they are actually concerned about, hey, Sarah, I know that if you go make 100 transactions on your debit card, my institution is going to make the interchange every time you swipe that sucker, and we're going to make more money. So please go to town at Amazon for me.
Yeah.
Right. Versus saying, hey, Sarah, you've been overspending recently, and we think that that's going to put you in a compromised financial position. So we actually want to help you make better decisions. Right. So
I love how this is like turning into financial therapy for Sarah.
I
can just see her face. I can see her face, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're so on to me. You're so on to me."
The problem is, we're on to all of us, right? I mean, we all do this.
Yeah.
So, again, it comes back to who is making those decisions about what we want to do. And, to Merle's point from earlier, if it's Amazon wants me to spend more money. So they're going to remove every friction point possible, including, my friend in the kitchen who would pipe up if I said her name, saying, hey, you're running low on your vitamin C. Do you want me to just order it for you? I got this. It'll be here tomorrow.
Creepy. Creepy.
And all you have to do is say, oh, yes, and
thank you. Yes, thank you.
I always say thank you. I'm convinced they're going to rise up and revolt at some point. I want them to remember that I treated them kindly.
Yes. That's very sweet. Yeah, I mean, even more dangerous is if they say, I'm ordering this for you tomorrow. You can tell me if that's not okay. But if you don't say anything, it's already it's done.
Exactly. You have to opt out of Alexa purchasing things for you.
Yeah. But so I think it's a really important point about, who is making the decisions about what you should be doing with your money and the alignment of incentives and really, I mean, okay. So we're in a position here where the person who is helping you manage your money, their incentives are going to be more aligned with yours within this community banking community. Community banking community?
Community banking community.
Yeah.
I like it.
Sure.
CBC.
But so then the question is, okay, so the incentives are aligned, but how do we know what's good for you? Like, how do we know what's actually going to enhance your financial well-being? Is it for you to tell us what you want from a bank? Or how does that? Because I feel like that is a problem that I don't know if there's a solution to. I don't know how people reach solutions of making decisions for other people.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that even comes back to just a lack of understanding of the financial system as a whole, right?
Sure.
And so I think a lot of times we're a lot more inclined to allow someone to tell us how to behave if we don't actually know how to behave in the first place.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's a really big lack of, financial literacy, just calling it out bluntly.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And there's really complicated financial systems, right? I mean, you look back to the whole, GameStop scenario, right? And I can't tell you how many friends that I consider very intelligent people and people that make good money and that you would just assume on the surface, know about how to handle the financial system in the United States, reach out to me and they're like, what the hell is happening here? What is this?
Ironically, I can explain this to you, and it had much less to do with like financial motives and financial literacy than you think. So don't worry too much about it. Also, just the fact I'm picking up yet another soapbox. What was going on with GameStop, like all this short selling business, I know it's legal, but like morally, the idea of short selling is very questionable. But then again, I think loads of things like paying for order flow, which is something Robinhood does, I think is also very morally questionable. But there's many things in the financial system which are morally questionable.
Yeah, well, there's money in morally questionable actions.
Yeah, and maybe a larger point is that businesses profit off of people being financially illiterate or having low literacy. And so there's no incentive for them to change that. They are very happy to tell you what you should be doing with your money and to tell you that this is a smart choice or the default choice or, the choice that we would make for you.
I think the biggest scam ever is the credit score, which everyone needs to have a credit score. You need to have a credit score to participate in the financial system, and you can only properly build a credit score with the devil itself, the credit card. It's just such a scam. Such a scam.
Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, she's not holding back today.
No, but it's just, I've been thinking about this loads where I'm just, because it's just, it is such a mess. And then, there's people like you, Josh, and the company, obviously, that you work for, that, you want to make things better. But then you look at this mess, and I mean, I don't want to sound like a complete millennial, but like, we know this system is broken. This is not good. So after a while, you're wondering, can you still fix the system with smaller adjustments and eventually end up somewhere good? From the perspective of the individual consumer, not the bank. The bank can go to shit for all I care. But is that even an option, knowing that the bank has absolutely no incentive to change? And after a while, if that is not an option, how badly do you need to disrupt the system? And what other system can you even put in place? Questions, just a couple of light, like one single sentence answers, please.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I think you can extrapolate that outside of even the banking ecosystem, right?
Absolutely.
And just think about anything in our society. You look at a lot of things that happened over the last year here in the United States around racial equality. And these are massive topics that we're not just going to flip a light switch and they're going to be fixed tomorrow.
No.
So, to your point of, can we even fix what's quote unquote broken with the financial systems? I mean, my argument would be that we have to. And we're not going to be able to do it overnight. No. So we do have to just chip away at it slowly. Is it going to happen in my lifetime? I don't know. Maybe it depends on if I eat enough broccoli or get hit by a bus. I don't know. Or it may not, right?
I love these two options in life. Broccoli, bus.
But I don't know. Call me, naive or optimistic and singing Kumbaya around the campfire. But I kind of think that we have to try. Right. Absolutely. We have to slowly keep chipping away at it. And I think that's, again, why I'm able to get pretty passionate about the community-minded FI space, and especially around, the option of having a nonprofit. Our CEO is a really big proponent that basically every industry, every business should have a not-for-profit competitor. So you have a side of the house that is fully capitalistic, that's trying to make a ton of money and is going to push the envelope and going to innovate and going to evolve. And then, quite frankly, probably a not-for-profit competitor that rides their coattails and steals a lot of that and offers a different model, right? And especially in banking, I think that that's incredibly important because it does give the consumer a choice. And it does give an option for somebody who is looking to change and say, we do want to look out for your best interests, right. Which is hard.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess ultimately, though, even within that system, it would require a lot of people to be using banks as their sort of only source of financial information, of financial education, of financial decision making. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think we do have to try. And I think, even from this conversation, I guess we've talked about the role of technology. We've talked sort of briefly, I guess, about financial literacy as being really important, factors that can help enhance people's financial well-being. Are there any other big ones that we should be thinking about or trying to come up with interventions to promote? Or are those the two big ones?
Well, I am jumping onto that. So, Josh, you take some time to think, because that's not a light question either. But financial literacy has not really been well underbuilt with regards to actually making an impact on financial well-being or actual improved financial decision making, which is shit. I don't know how else to put it to you. So there's been lots of research on whether if you make someone financially literate, more literate, does this actually do anything for them? And there seems to be no robust proof that it actually does. It does not improve financial decision making.
Well,
it doesn't.
So we're more educated about the right decision. We just still choose not to make it.
Yeah, because I mean, let's be honest. So one of the basics from behavioral science is that you've got your system 1, you've got your system 2. You can pump system 2 full of information, but if it never gets activated, there's just no way in hell. And when it comes to money, what we do see is just that people are, I mean, obviously they're animals, but they turn into slightly different animals when they have to deal with money. The most common equivalent being the ostrich. People don't like dealing with money. They'd rather not deal with it at all. So a lot of financial decision making is actually actively not making a decision. That's actually something that you see a lot, which is just not great. And other times they're just complete sheep, complete herd animals where, oh yeah, my friend's doing this, so I'll just do the same thing. So there's just a whole bunch of biases which are just based on the fact that we're either ostriches or sheep, which is just unfortunate.
So I guess to answer part of your question then, Sarah, maybe it's not just about making people more educated about the right decisions. It's actually trying to find ways to influence the behavior in which they act upon.
Yes.
To hopefully incentivize them to go towards those smarter decisions that we've taught them to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think a lot of times we don't even know what our options are or what the smart thing to do is. And so, then we don't even have the tools. And then we make a bad decision without even tools. But even then, if we have the tools, we're still making bad decisions. So we have to solve both of those problems. We have to give them good tools and then get them to actually make good decisions around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good luck, Josh.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking like, oh my gosh.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine and, to use the obviously Urban Dictionary correct word here, he said, this whole adulting thing is hard. And he made the comment about he had recently, so very long story, he does an amazing work in the charity space as well. And he has a charity that takes military veterans out on fishing adventures with the idea that giving them one great day could change their decisions about taking their own lives, which is a massively rampant problem in the military population, right?
Yeah,
so
it really is.
he had recently sold his old boat and gotten a new boat, long story short, right, had come out with a chunk of change, a big pile of cash from selling his original boat. Nice. And he was sitting on it and, he was texting me back and forth about all these things he wanted to do with it, even though he knew the right decision was to pay down this higher interest debt and do some smart things with it. And he was like, I know the decision I'm going to make is the right one. Cause he's a educated guy. He knows the right things to do. And he's, behaviorally built to make the right decision. But even there, you could see he was like, man, but I really don't want to.
Nope.
I really want to go do some fun things with this.
Yeah.
It's hard. And I think there's
hard.
a lot of, like you said, there's a lot of social pressure around it too, of even just, not just my friends are doing this, so I'm going to do the same things that they do, but even just, my friends just got back from Cabo. Like I saw that on Instagram. I should go to Cabo.
What's this obsession with Cabo? Like, I swear to God, no one knew where Cabo was like 2 years ago.
I don't know, but I've never been.
And neither have I.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of what we sometimes miss in the conversation. We like to have these big conversations about financial well-being and what can we be doing and from a policy perspective, but sometimes it just misses that individual experience of, you can have all the right tools, but you're still really drawn to doing something else with that pot of money, which it may be that what we define as the right thing to do with that money is subjective. Like, there isn't the objective correct answer would be to, minimize your future debt or to, increase your income or something like that. But actually for the individual, what you get from having an experience with that money, you could be hit by a bus tomorrow, and then what good is that money to anyone? Like,
no,
Okay, so
Sarah, no, I hate that. Sarah's promoting the hedonistic treadmill. Bad,
No, but-
Sarah, bad.
But I think, unless, and I think that's what gets missed from a lot of conversations. Like you're either called, stupid,
Spendthrift?
or you have no self-control, or you're, to even want to do those kind of things. But that it's kind of like a really human, natural thing that everyone sort of experiences that.
Now that's a thread I want to tug on. I'm curious what you two think. That's a whole nother topic, right? Is planning for retirement. And,
Yep.
Then that's saying I have this money now and I could do this with it today, or I could put it away for, an event 30 years from now.
You think you're going to retire in 30 years? I don't think you will.
I don't know if I'll ever retire, but that's another conversation.
I'm the same, and I think Sarah might be similar, but I think that's just a workaholic thing. I don't think that's a financial thing, really.
I can't wait to never work again. That's
Sarah, you're 26. It's gonna be a while.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait. It's gonna be amazing.
There's a whole nother tangent, right? I mean, I saw somebody posted something on LinkedIn the other day that kind of hit me like a brick, because I'm that total workaholic. Like I derive a lot of my self-worth out of the effort that I put in, and being the hardest worker in the room is really important to me, and it always has been. And somebody
that's a
posted
never-ending fight, mate. That's a never-ending fight.
And somebody posted something on LinkedIn the other day that was like, you got to stop wearing that as a badge of honor. I worked 100 hours this week, and therefore I'm super tough, right? And so, but a lot of people do, right? Like we wear that as a badge of honor. Like I worked harder than anyone else. I put in the grind.
No.
But you ruined your family life, and you weren't.
See, this is the thing. Like I respect the hard working ethic, as in when you work and you go hard, but like not for 100 hours a week. That's not hard work. That's inefficient. That's what that is.
Well,
from my perspective.
But to play devil's advocate, right? So maybe you work really, really hard for 40 hours for this one job, but given your position in life or your background or your circumstance, it doesn't do enough to, pay your bills. So you have to work another 40-hour job, right? Yeah. But I guess what was interesting to me was, this idea that a lot of times, people do like to wear that as a badge of honor. Like I work really, really hard and I put in more hours, and that's actually really harmful to ourselves, right? And we're compromising a lot of other areas to be able to quote unquote wear that badge of honor.
Yeah. If that's the metric with which you measure your success, your self-worth, then it throws everything else to the wayside as well. Other things that would enhance your life that get thrown aside. Yeah.
So I guess back to what Merle and I were saying, right? Yeah. Like if we think that we're going to work forever, so I guess then becomes the question, like, how do you define success for yourself, right? Because if you do feel really successful and really happy because you are working, then maybe working forever and never retiring is what's going to truly make you happy.
Sure.
But maybe for Sarah, kicking it in the backyard with a lemonade for, the rest of her life, that maybe that's how she defines success, right?
A lemonade, mate, these aren't the dry ages. Alcohol is still legal in the UK.
But, we all define success differently. So, how we plan for quote unquote retirement, the definition of success may look different as well. But that also has implications all the way to the today for somebody that's younger, right? So how you define the success of your retirement 30, 40, 50, 60 years from now may have an impact on the financial decisions that you make today, and, throw the proverbial bus monkey wrench into it too, right? You don't ever go out to eat. You don't ever buy yourself anything, new. You save every penny you possibly can, and you get hit by a bus at 25. I don't know. Maybe the whole moral of this podcast is don't jaywalk. I don't know. Don't cross the street without looking for buses.
Buses are scary.
Buses are evil.
I think it's an interesting point. I think it's all about balance, right? Life is all about balance, like what you can do for yourself now versus what you want to be able to do for yourself in the future. Like everything is a compromise. I think there are very few decisions that we make that don't involve some, as an economist would say, opportunity cost.
But this is the issue, right? So life is all about balance, but most of the decisions that we make with regards to our money are so present and immediate oriented that we have absolutely no balance in our financial decision making. And whether that bus is coming or not, I currently am in a really rural area, so if a bus suddenly shows up, I'm gonna be hella suspicious. But it's just, I understand the desire for balance, and I understand that, you know, if you've been working hard, which is now a loaded term, and if you've been saving up and if you're making the right choices, you know, sure, you can give yourself a holiday to Cabo, granted that your really high cost debt has been paid off. But after a while, it's just, I know that there is a need for balance, but we need to focus on the fact that when we currently make financial decisions, we do not decide with balance in mind. I think currently what you're looking at is, just like Josh said, your friend went to Cabo, now you want to go to Cabo, and you've been pulling like 80-hour work weeks and you're tired. And now on top of, you know, the fact that you're tired and overworked and haven't been to Cabo, now you also have to sort out your money, your current wage, your next wages, especially if you don't have job security, which is just completely rotten. And then you also have to think about retirement and whether your bank is the devil or is actually community oriented. And after a while, you realize that this is just not worth it. And then you become an ostrich.
Yeah. And then you go to Cabo.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it is hard.
Back like an iguana.
And I think, you know, this is one of the things you and I talked about too, that I found really interesting was, I think, especially when we throw this whole, you know, global pandemic thing into the mix, I think there's a lot of, I deserve this, you know, I may not be able to afford it. It may not be a smart decision, but man, I've been locked up at home for the last year. I deserve that vacation. I've been working really hard. I've been dealing with working from home and managing kids and family life and trying to work and being on Zoom 12 hours. You know, I deserve this. And I think that element of I deserve this drives a lot of our financial decisions as well.
Yeah, but this is something very, very interesting, because when we feel like we deserve something and that we deserve to treat ourselves, which is another very toxic culture, why does that always involve a fuck ton of money? That is a question to ask.
Because we live in a society, Merle. We live in a society.
A capitalist society. It's
exactly.
an important thing. No, but this is the thing. Like, treating yourself is almost completely entangled with dropping a fuck ton of money. Like, oh, I deserve this designer handbag. I deserve this. Suddenly you're in Cabo. Honestly, now I'm going to Google where Cabo actually is because I don't know. But it's just this type of stuff. It's very expensive to deserve something, especially if you can't afford it. So I think I'm going to look into what is driving this. It's very, very interesting. Josh, any thoughts?
I mean, for me personally, I think it goes back to that whole definition of success, right? Or, you know, definition of worth. And I think, you know, sometimes we take that past experience into quote unquote account when we make that decision, right? So especially to your point, if I've been locked up at home dealing with this pandemic for a year and I've been dealing with all this stuff for this amount of time, that I could see how equates to a very large sum of money is what it's going to take to offset what I went through. And therefore what I deserve is, you know, directly proportionate to what I quote unquote, you know, am using as my reason for deserving this. So, but what if, you know, we redefine that success and say, you know what? I've been through a year of being locked up at home, dealing with COVID, whatever, yada, yada, yada. I really, really, really deserve that Kit Kat bar. And it's like $1.50, right? And if that Kit Kat bar is what, erases and gives you like, I deserve that Kit Kat bar. I deserve to treat myself. But it was only $1.50 versus a $10,000 Cabo vacation, right? But
I feel these are different worlds.
Yeah, you're not.
What?
People aren't going to make that decision, right?
No.
Yeah.
They're not going to say that Kit Kat bar is what I deserve. They're going to say that Cabo vacation is what I deserved.
Yeah.
And I think that's really hard. And I think that goes back to, again, what we were saying with just even some of the social elements of that, because especially, don't get me on the soapbox of social media, right? But,
oh, disaster.
I mean,
disaster.
That has a huge implication on what we want in life, right?
Yeah.
Because it's very easy. Before social media, I didn't know how many of my friends went to Cabo, but now I do, right?
Everyone apparently goes.
Pictures. Yeah. So that makes me want that over the Kit Kat bar, right? Because now I know that quote unquote happiness that Instagram showed me exists.
Oh, the highlight reel. Oh yes, excellent. The highlight reel of life.
It's interesting. It's almost like the actual definition of retail therapy, of like the act of spending money is cathartic. And as you say, there is, you can put a value on your pain. You got a proportionate, that was worth £1,000 or $1,000 or, it's putting a value on something that's kind of intangible, which is interesting. Yeah.
In all fairness, though, this is what governments currently are trying to do, which I just said currently, so it's going to date the episode, as they're opening up and they're getting rid of restrictions, right? They have now seen a year of what we can call essential misery, but people have had enough. And now what the government needs to do is they need to figure out how much mental health damage and how much educational setbacks, of course, for those currently in primary school, are worth the fact that currently not everyone is vaccinated, but we need to lift restrictions because people are going batshit. You need to trade off what, especially for the older generations, like the much older generations, if it is worth having them hospitalized in an IC, so we will not see detrimental effects now formed in primary education develop much later on in the lives of our children currently. And those are trade-offs that, I mean, good luck even converting them into a unit such as money, because there is no way to set that off against each other because you're not measuring the same thing. It's incredibly difficult. But I feel like money is just almost, it has become a default measure for utility.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, talk to any economist. That's the whole of economics is built off of putting a monetary value off of intangible things and calling it a science. So
calling it a science, and then science looks at us and is like, no. Nice try, but no. God, I feel like we've been through so much this episode, but I think, a really, really unfortunate question for you, Josh, but how would you fix the banking system?
Oh, gosh. We have a whole nother episode for that, except I think it would just be a whole episode of me sitting there scratching my head.
We can play some music underneath that.
Right. I think like we've talked about, I don't think it's going to be an overnight thing. I don't think there's one massive thing that we can do that's going to be this, massive catalyst for change. But I think that by empowering consumers to have the tools and then, putting financial systems in place and giving them opportunity to choose those, like community-minded financial institutions, to be able to not only give them the tools, but give them the desire to make those choices. Hey, look, at the end of the day, we're not going to get them all, right? I'm just being honest. Some of us are going to make really, really stupid decisions with our money, right? And some of them are going to be incredibly, emotional decisions, right? And I'll even use myself as a personal example. Merle, you and I kind of talked about this on the last one. So, my wife and I are in our mid 30s, and 2 years ago, my wife battled breast cancer. Like, that was something we never expected, especially at that stage in our lives. Right. And it really, shook us to our core about just our mortality. Right. And so really throwing that proverbial bus in the scenario.
Yep.
And then going back to this whole conversation that we've had around, I quote unquote deserve this. Like, look, we're intelligent people. We have the tools and we know the right decisions to make. I tell you what, at the end of that, when she got through all of that, we went to Hawaii and it was I don't give a crap what it costs. We'll deal with that later. Like, you just went through that. We're going to put a monetary value to that. And the monetary value is whatever the hell you want. Like, you just went through torture. So it's all good. Right. So, I mean, we're not always going to make the right decision. And I think that's okay. But as long as we overall make better decisions, we'll be in a better place. So I don't know if I really actually even answered your question, but it's just small chipping away and giving more options for people to make the right choice so that more often than not, we do make the right choice. And I think technology will play a role in that, right? But I think as we've even discussed throughout today's episode, just it's not 100% removal of friction. It's removing the right friction and inserting the right friction.
Nicely put.
And knowing which frictions to put in and which frictions to leave out is a whole nother question. But
and then it gets into the comment that you guys made earlier about these are a lot of times they're not being made by people making it as a moral decision.
Nope.
So the more options there are, I think, of people making technology and payment systems and et cetera around moral decisions. Again, we're not going to get them all, right? There's still going to be people out there that want to be billionaires. So they are going to put those systems in place. So they are looking to put those systems in place to screw you out of your money. But if there's at least an option to not,
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for coming on and joining us today. It's been so much fun just to talk around so many subjects and to see the soapbox come out so many times. We always love that. But if the listener does want to follow your work and follow what you're doing and all the good work that you just talked about, where can they find you online?
Absolutely. Easiest would be LinkedIn. So just Josh DeTar, my last name. It's DETAR. Find me on LinkedIn. You can find our company there and learn more about what we do. It's typhone.com, TYFONE.com. And I'm always happy to get on soapboxes, especially when it's around these topics. So you know where to find me now.
Fantastic.
Well, look for the next soapbox. You're probably standing on it.
Well, thank you so much. And your wife is amazing. And I'm so happy that she's healthy.
Thank you. Yeah, she makes me a better person every day. So I'm very fortunate.
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, ladies. Appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
So that was us talking to Josh. Again, Josh, thank you so much for making the time. I think we had a great chat. I think we saw a lot of soapboxes going past. Sarah, any particular soapbox you'd like to continue standing on?
Yes, this was an episode of soapboxes, which in our world is always a good thing. I just think that the note we ended the episode on was one that really resonated with me. About how we need to find out, find the frictions and find the barriers and where it's been made too easy. And that's sort of where we can help people with managing their money in effective ways. When tools such as personal finance management or this sort of fancy technology and Venn diagrams they give you in apps and organize your spending into little groups is something that people are just maybe not as willing to engage with unless they come in with a very specific mindset. I need to, I want to do this to look at my finances in a deeper way. So I thought it was an interesting episode and nice for us, I guess, to not speak to a behavioral scientist.
Yeah. It makes for a very nice difference. No, I think the soapbox, or maybe not really a soapbox, because we didn't really have any clear opinions on it, but it's just us kind of waiting to see what's going on, is what a couple of economists have dubbed the reemergence of the Roaring Twenties, where, clearly once we come out of this hellhole, which in all fairness, though, given that we continued having our jobs, hellhole is a very, very, it's an overstatement to say the least. But once we come out of these lockdowns, I think a lot of people, like Josh said, they're not going to be happy with a Kit Kat. Like, there is no way a Kit Kat, it must be a very, very golden Kit Kat, just like a chunk of pure gold, to compensate, the fact that most people have essentially lost a year of their lives. And how do you even express that financially? And how do you express, the loss of income potentially, and the fact that, you weren't able to go out to dinner. And these are things that you can sort of offset financially, but, the mental health aspect, the fact that you haven't seen your family in God knows how long. I think it's going to be interesting to see how that ends up happening, and whether that has a longer term impact on, personal finance or, PFM in general. It's going to be interesting. And maybe that is the time that, community-oriented banks can really do something. I mean, we find that most behavior changes in ways that we hadn't expected it after a drastic change in context, right? I mean, behavioral science, everything is context dependent. So if the context comes crashing down, there's everything to play for.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And I think you could maybe very broadly divide everyone up into one of two groups: those who have saved money during the pandemic and those who have lost money, even though money is, only one of many, many metrics in which you can think of people's experiences during the last couple of months. And I think it was interesting the way that we were talking about using money to put a price on grief or sadness or distress or trauma, and using, if your relationship with money is that of, it's a way of therapy, of acknowledging your experience or rewarding yourself for something, or
compensation, almost very strange.
I think people's relationship with money is sometimes as strange as people's relationship with food, like highly complex,
sometimes toxic,
linked to a lot of trauma, and
so emotional.
And we don't really ever have that sort of conscious discussion of, okay, well, wait, what is my relationship with money? Like, that isn't really a conversation that we have. We don't examine ourselves in that way.
No, I think not, but I think, there are, I have heard of this, like when you go to a financial advisor, but like, let's be honest, that is a very specific subset of people. So that's either people who have been sent to like a financial advisor or like a financial advice institution, because it is not going well. Or, people are like, oh, I'm just so wealthy, let me go to a financial advisor so I don't have to deal with it anymore. These are the two people you're dealing with. I don't know what the middle is doing, but the middle is just not that invested. And I think, especially with the former, because then it becomes quite clear that what you're doing with money is really, really problematic. In that case, I have heard of an aspect of the financial advice being a sort of therapy almost, and like a sort of coaching where people are actively asked to figure out what their money mindset is, because it is very, very easy to develop a very poor mindset towards money depending on how you were nurtured. Who is around you? What's your family experience with money? What social economic strata are you from? That is actually very, very impactful, and it shapes how you handle and how you perceive money, which is not by default a good perspective. Which is maybe another thing that, community-oriented banks can look into, like to actually alter perceptions of money. I think that would be a very interesting avenue for them, given that they are so people-oriented.
Yeah, I would love to see evidence on an intervention like this. 'Cause, I mean, personally, I think, anytime you take a magnifying glass and look at yourself through a different lens, you learn something new. And for better or for worse, you know yourself a bit better.
Exactly.
And even if you still fall for the biases and the heuristics and the shortcuts because you can't rewire your brain, at least you can understand yourself a bit more and see when it's happening, and try to make the right decision more times than you don't. I think that's sort of like Josh's takeaway sentiment as well. Sometimes life slaps you in the face and you just say, okay, I'm not going to be here forever. Fuck it. I'm just going to go for that experience. And no bank should tell you, no, you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or it's a moral obligation for you not to do that.
It's a moral obligation to repay your very expensive credit card loan to us. Although, I mean, just a quick side note, if you do have a very expensive credit card loan, 23% APR is no joke, and you should maybe get onto that. But don't take it from me, but do it for yourself. Do it for the kids.
Exactly. I think that's a good sentiment to leave off on, I think.
All right, then that is exactly what we'll do. Guys, as always, I hope this was an educational, a thought-provoking, or at least entertaining episode. As always, everything with regards to Josh, everything that's been mentioned throughout the episode will be linked below. So in the description, regardless of what platform you're using. We hope you have an absolutely great week, and we hope to see you again next week.
You're the dummy that don't believe in science. All your projects always be denying. You're the one alone.